boys and girls. And today it's time for another half-assed production. I'm gonna come in here and look at an exhibition by this cat, Erik den Breejen. Hello.
Fancy meeting you here.
And what's the title of the show?
There's a riot going on.
There's a riot going on. Well, we're going to pan across the main gallery here. Well, I thought I was going to try to snag you and we'll just have a simple discussion about the paintings and some of the ideas and maybe some of your technical things that you work on here.
Sounds good.
Let's start with this one.
That's a good place to start. It's one of the earlier paintings in the entire body of work.
I just want to come up and get a close-up so people can see what this is actually made of text.
Yeah.
And
somewhere in the realm of 2,400 words.
So if we stand back, who are we looking at here?
That would be Harry Nilsson.
Harry Nilsson. Is he still alive? No, he passed away earlier.
Away in 95.
Oh, that's not too early.
Yeah. Earlier than it should have been.
Now these are all acrylic on canvas.
Linen, but yeah.
Linen.
Yeah.
Okay. That's nice. Now tell me about how you go about selecting your subjects and the text and some of these other problems you're dealing with.
Well, this might be a good place to start. Harry Nilsson is, he's a bit of an oddball. I mean, I came to know of him almost rescuing his album that this comes from, which is Nilsson, which was his biggest success.
Didn't he do the soundtrack for, what was it, Midnight Cowboy or something like that?
He had Everybody's Talking in there. That was a big hit before this. And that what's interesting is that he is a tremendously prolific songwriter, but his own songs have been hits for other artists, whereas his own biggest hits were cover songs of other people's songs. So Everybody's Talking from Midnight Cowboy was a Fred Neil song originally, which he had a hit with, minor hit on his own, then it was in the movie and it became huge. He was ineligible for the Oscar because it wasn't an original song, which is kind of funny.
Huh.
This is Nilsson Schmilsson, his 71 album, and I was saying I got it out of the dollar bin and fell in love with it.
Well, is there kind of an aspect of the retro look or maybe nostalgia involved in some of this?
I don't really see it that way necessarily. I get the retro thing with the palette that he used, but what was interesting about this piece is that it's a fairly iconic album cover, and I think it's a little bit ironic even that his biggest success is quite possibly his most casual appearance. It's very Nilsson in that way. They came to shoot the cover and he just decided to not change out his bathrobe. He was just at his house. And a lot of people speculate this.
Well, at least he got off the toilet and came out to talk to him. I guess.
Yeah, he's holding a hash pipe here, so that's a little...
I couldn't really tell. Yeah. So how long does one of the major pieces take you to actually paint?
Something this size, it's hard to say with this one because I worked on it and then I did a few other projects in between.
Just give us an estimate.
Okay, this one will be more than a month of full-time painting.
So when you say full-time painting, is that 6 hours a day, 8 hours a day, 12 hours a day?
About 8 hours a day. So for instance, Pryor took a full month of 40 hours a week. This I worked on over the course of several months, but was interrupted.
Wow. Let's move on and look at a couple of other ones here. Okay, so this is Liza Minnelli.
That's right, in Cabaret. So kind of a bit of two things going on. I'm using fairly iconic album cover imagery like in Nilsson, whereas this, I wanted something that would be distinctly Liza, but not an image that necessarily been reproduced to death. So I went and watched the film Cabaret many times, which is made by Bob Fosse, who's primarily a choreographer, also a brilliant director. And I was just struck by how visual the movie was, and some of the shots were just beautiful, and I freeze framed them and based the painting on that.
So you were talking about 400 or 1,400 words in the Nilsson and
24, yeah.
And how many in this?
About the same.
So how do you actually break up your texts and decide how much you're going to get in there? I mean, does it matter? Are these all the verses of one song, or do you have several songs?
The song making is actually a big part of the process.
Wiedersehen, mein Herr, es war sehr gut, mein Herr, und vorbei Dunkenstein mich.
I really like
vor
it in the
mein
German
Herr.
there. So it's a mix of songs that Liza's character, Sally Bowles, sang in Cabaret and dialogue from the film. So it's a lot of, I get very involved in the process. And so I was watching the film with the script, finding there's some really witty dialogue actually. And I would grab that when I needed it. And then when it goes into a song, I would use that. Since a lot of the songs are sung by the MC character, it's brilliant. I didn't use those
Joel
songs.
Gray, is that
That's
the
right.
MC?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. I used her songs, except for the intro, which is him.
So how do you know if you've got too much text or not enough text? How much of this do you plan out beforehand?
I'm planning it out a lot, so I'm thinking about...
Do you do studies in pencil on paper and stuff like that, or?
No, I'm working with the word processor, and it's just easier and faster to make the chunks. So I'm thinking about how many, rows per inch, so to speak. So in this case, I found a sweet spot for a lot of these large canvases. In fact, all the ones in this room are 1 inch per row. So
okay, and so each letter is about an inch square? Is that kind of the grid we're talking about? Okay.
So it's a 72-inch canvas, and there's 72 lines.
You were talking about you just put a piece of tape down here, and that's how you keep things going straight. And how do you get your image in there? I was asking if you had projected these, and you said no.
Yeah, it's in the planning. So I'm hand selecting, I'm getting the text into the shape that I want, and then I'm hand selecting each letter or word to the right color to create the image. But the tape, there's no taped edges, everything's freehanded painted. But I do have a band of tape keeping me in line, roughly, but I like to have a little bit of wobble from the hand. So I'm shaping it to try and fit the rectangle, whether it's vertical or horizontal. Getting it all in there, taking away things, adding if I need to, working with an image in mind, and then how that's going to be. Is it going to be a large canvas? Is it going to be a small canvas? If so, how does that affect the text? So it's a very intrinsic relationship.
And how about your palette that you're working with here? Most of these you start out with a monochrome background, right?
Yeah.
I think maybe one or two I've seen you got kind of a fade across there.
Yeah.
And then how do you decide what kind of colors you're going to use? Are you using photoshopped imagery that you're tweaking with the color registration, or are you doing this intuitively?
I'm starting with a feeling about color. So with these, I'm getting a little more specific with ranges of color for given canvases. So this is sort of in the purple-blue zone. If you look around, I mean, this is a little bit more primary with the reds and blues. Pryor is kind of in a magenta area. Ginsberg is, kind of an army green, as well as other military colors area.
Let's take a look at Richard Pryor. Now, your last show here was dealing with the Beach Boys and a lot of Beach Boys tunes.
Yes.
And music and lyrics, and even got into some trouble with copyright issues with that.
Yes.
But this one, Richard Pryor, is a comic, so these are all just parts of his routine that you've
from his 70s album.
taken the text from the 70 albums.
The people knew that he was in The Toy, which was kind of almost an insulting role, and they knew him from Superman 3. And to insiders, those were both seen as where his career started to go downhill. And that's what he's most famous for, and for lighting himself on fire, at least among my generation and younger people. So when I heard these early 70s albums, I was completely blown away at how fresh and vital they were, and how they were still provocative and hilarious. It was, I just thought, I couldn't believe how brilliant it was. And
Well, he was like the Black Lenny Bruce, he was way ahead of his time, very topical, and pushing all the boundaries and the taboos.
yeah, and using the white guy voice to brilliant effect. Could
And
you
this
pass
one
me
here-
that sauce?
This one here, you've also got kind of a pretty wide spectrum of colors here, because he's got the shine, if you will.
Yes.
It's kind of a light green off these magentas, browns,
again,
earth
I'm
tones.
going through, in this case, concert films of him, and I wanted to really find the right image that, to me, captured the kind of vulnerability he had, being so intimate with thousands of people, and also the warmth of his character and the generosity of spirit. And I was looking through, sort of the Google image things and the more familiar, more reproduced images, and there's some great ones in there. But I felt like with this scale, I was able to get a likeness that was also not necessarily a cliched image.
Yeah, how important is the image to you? We're going to take a quick run in here because I wanted to come back here and maybe wrap up. Because some of these you're literally pixelating these to the point where
Breaks down.
you have to be standing back and squinting and all these other things to get the actual image. So is the image important for you? Is that just a framework in which you can lay on your text? How does that break down for you?
I think it's really they're meeting each other head on. You kind of can't have one without the other in these particular paintings. And I like the way in which the image breaks down.
Mother,
it becomes text,
too many
or
of you
it
cry.
becomes color, and then it becomes image again. So you have sort of this, I think there's three aspects to it.
Is there anybody that you've been influenced by? I mean, is this an aspect of Derrida's deconstructionism or some of the other linguistical philosophers that have been sort of dealing with the idea that everything is a text and that the brain can only really depict things through text?
I don't necessarily extend the metaphor that far, but it wasn't very obvious that there was nothing outside of language. I like that idea, and of course, like The Death of the Author by Mark was very influential and I think liberating text for using text and repurposing language. And I also like a lot of the work that Lenny Bruce and people like Pryor and Carlin, who's not in this show, I like what they were doing in questioning the potency, the power, and the meaning, and how all that is kind of slippery and transitory.
I want to get back here and we're going to wrap up looking at one of my favorites, Allen Ginsberg. We were talking about some of these other pieces, and a lot of them seem like they're based on music or album covers and rock stars and stuff like this.
Yeah,
but Allen is a poet. What is this based on? Is this one of his poems?
This is another one of these things that I think gets a little bit lost in time. Like Ginsberg is, I think, primarily identified as a beat poet, but he was tremendously important and present on the scene in the early 70s with the Vietnam War protests.
Oh yeah, he was also kind of the godfather of the hippie movement, and when I used to work at Utrecht, I'd see him over eating at the Blimpies every now and then.
Oh, really?
And see him, driving around, or running around the East Village. So I never really stopped and talked to him, but I would see him, and I always wondered what kind of sandwiches he was eating at Blimpies. I think he, like me, was eating the tuna salad.
Well, this one is primarily from a poem called Friday the 13th from 1970. I used a shorter poem about war protesting that was also from 70, and then a stanza from another poem to flesh it out. But most of it is this one poem, and a lot of it could come straight out of today's headlines. There's stuff about Wall Street, there's stuff about pesticides, government corruption.
Oh yeah, everybody's still complaining about the same things, and it seems like nobody's found any solutions.
Right, and I found that a little bit disturbing. I also found it relevant. He was one of the first people to actually start to propose that the U.S. government was involved in drug smuggling, and everyone thought he was a paranoid freak at the time until it was proven true. So one of the things I'm interested in with the show is the way that history is recorded through artists, and I'm setting the whole thing in the early 70s, which is why we get the 70s version of Ginsberg, but also because I feel that period is very relevant to today.
Okay, we're going to wrap up now, but I also have to put in a disclaimer that I'm also one of the people that exhibits here at the gallery, so
I think it's in your show.
So before we wrap up here, I just wanted to let everybody know that here at Freight Volume. All right, Erik, can you give us a couple of lines from one of Allen's poems?
Off the top of my head. Oh.
I saw the best minds of my generation driven mad.
There you go, that's good.
Running naked and hungry down Negro streets looking for an angry fix.
Yes.
Okay, in that case, give us a...
Earth pollution identical with mind pollution. Okay. That's from this one.
Thanks, Erik Breejen.
Thank you, Lauren.
And what was the name of the show again?
There's a riot going on.
Here at Freight Volume. What's the address here?
530 West 24th Street.
Okay. Thank you, Erik. And as always, thank you, Kate. So nice. I like the resonance between the two horns. That was nice.